Always something. I appreciate it. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, welcome to this month's edition of Big Data Bellevue. Thank you for your patience. We definitely had some technical issues getting started. So just to recap, so Big Data Bellevue was founded about a decade ago by Intellius, a group team of data scientists, back before ChatGPT and all of this open AI stuff came about. But we've always been following the big data industry, how data, as the volume grows, how it's processed, or all these processing type of engines, and how it's used by business to solve real problems. And in the process, we've learned a lot, from these meetups, from presenters. And so over the years, one of the promises of big data and analysis of data, with the evolution of AI is, applications to different fields, such as health-related applications. Today, we have, the privilege of getting a non-technical speaker who is a doctor of radiology. That's his specialty, who will give us introduction to what are the current challenges in that space and how they could be addressed with AI-driven solutions. And we encourage you, if you have questions, to please ask for any clarifications or ideas, because we're hoping it'll be a little bit more of a discussion as well, given the technical requirements as well as what are the possibilities from the industry perspective for AI to solve these problems. So with that, I'm gonna
thank you so much.
hand it over to Justin.
Thank you. May I just ask, am I speaking? I don't know what the video is, so I don't know if people can. Am I speaking out here? Is the camera looking at me this way? Is that?
The camera is right here. Let me shift you a little bit this way. And
thank you.
It'll pick you up more often.
So if I stand, I'm just trying to see.
I can see you right.
Oh, I see. So the camera.
So the camera is actually embedded in this.
I see, it's there.
There's one here and there's one here.
Oh, okay, right. So is it better for me to have I'll stand right here. As long as they can hear me and see the slides, I think that's the important thing. But they are missing. Those who can't, if I'm not on the screen, they don't know that I actually have an official doctor shirt that I stole from Seattle Hospital. Right here, it says on here. So anyway, they disappear, and the hospitals don't like it at all. So they tried putting like labels on them saying, property of Seattle VA, made them all the more target. So with that, thank you very much for the kind introduction. Thank you for being here. And I hope that at the end of the time that I have to speak with you, that I will have shared with you some ideas about how AI, big data, adaptive algorithms, a term I prefer, would be able potentially to be applied to certain problems in medical imaging that are very difficult and we face every day in imaging. I'd like us to move more and more, as we have the power to do this, from the sort of heuristic approach we often use in medicine of saying, well, I'm not sure, but sounds like, to a more taking advantage of the resources that are available that aren't really available to the everyday practicing physician, nurse practitioner, or mid-level practitioner. So with that, let me tell you a little bit about my background. I graduated from the University of Washington in math and chemistry. And I want to point out, not to put in a plug for myself, but if Microsoft needs anybody who can draw superb hexagons, it's me. Okay, I know the Greek alphabet, uppercase and lowercase. That's what I got from math and chemistry. But anyway, from there I went to the University of Washington School of Medicine, and I then I graduated and then went to the University of Vermont to study internal medicine. After doing that for 2 years, I then came back to the University of Washington and entered what are called residency programs, that's postgraduate training in nuclear medicine. And that involves both diagnosis and treatment of certain diseases like lymphomas with radioactive substances that are typically injected. And then I went into the diagnostic radiology program at the University of Washington, and I finished and obtained board certification, which is kind of like the certificate saying, okay, you're good in both nuclear medicine and radiology. From there, I left the academic world. I entered a private practice, small group on First Hill, where I worked for about 15 years, doing primarily cross-sectional imaging, that is MR, CT, ultrasound of cancer patients from the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center, which is something my area of particular interest in imaging is body imaging of cancer. And in that category, specifically breast cancer and where it goes and how it behaves. And after I left that practice, I was recruited to join a much larger practice based out of Spokane, but they had teleradiology. So, and I was with them for about 7 years. And then I developed a disorder called narcolepsy. It's a sleep disorder of all things. So in some kind of ironic sense, if you have to have a disease, I mean, a radiologist who can't stay awake, which is what narcolepsy does, I could not stay awake to read the cases. And with narcolepsy, typically I was falling asleep about 150 times a day, having microsleeps. So this really messed up my ability to read studies in the dark, which is typically what we do. Fortunately, there's good treatment. I have been treated, and I'm back to near normal now, as it were. After that, I applied for a White House fellowship because I was interested in seeing how government works, and I wanted to learn more about the United States presidency, and I failed. Didn't want it. That's okay. So I said, all right, what's next best? Well, United States Senate, in terms of sort of like power and all that. So I applied for a Senate fellowship, and I managed to get one. So I was, for a time, the Health Policy Fellow, the United States Senate Health Policy Fellow for Senator Ron Wyden, the senior Democrat from Oregon. And that was a fantastic experience. I mean, I had wonderful experiences, which I will not bore you with all because that's not why I'm here, but I will tell you that I learned about power in Washington. I learned very quickly. There's a little train that goes underground, connects all of the major buildings on the White House. Well, I don't know about the White House, I shouldn't say, but the Capitol, the Library of Congress, the various Senate and House Representative office buildings, okay, all underground. So there are only so many seats on it. So I sat down because I had to go from this place to that place, and that's the way you do it. And a staffer came up to me and said, "You need to move." And I looked at them like, I mean, what am I going to do? Argue? You need to move. I said, okay. May I ask why? Because Senator McCain would like your seat. I said, of course, I shall move right away. So it was, here comes John McCain, the late John McCain, and he takes the seat. I'm staring at this guy's a lawyer. He's a very senior senator, has done amazing things. And it was just like, oh, I am so happy to give up my seat. And also in the office that I was working in, one of the, I think he was the equivalent of a file clerk. It was a fairly low level position. And I happened to be talking to him one day. I was considered by rank and mid-level staffer. Okay. And I was talking with him lunch, and he's a very modest man. Where are you from? What do you do? I was in the Army. Oh, is that right? For how long? Oh, about blah, blah. And it came out, this guy won the Congressional Medal of Honor. I'm sitting there thinking like, what is he doing filing papers in this office? He loves the government. He loves the country. It was so neat to see. That was his way. He's retired, but that was his way of doing something that was important to him. But okay, remind me, double down on modesty, okay? Anyway, so those are wonderful experiences. Along the way, when I was in the chemistry department, I became interested in the following problem. We have MRI, magnetic resonance imaging. And if you think about it, if you do things in such a way, the magnetic resonance imager is really an amazing spatially resolved NMR spectrometer. That is, it's able to record a spectrum, a low resolution spectrum of the chemicals, hydrogen, actually, in this case, hydrogen, in the body. And so you can actually measure quantities without doing anything invasive. This is not imaging, but you can use it as in a sense, a tool to make an extraordinary number of measurements, spectra, of various substances. You can use it in industry, which I did on various substances, and I received a small grant from Unilever for that while I was there. And so this led me to look into the math of both a multidimensional NMR spectroscopy, which was an evolving science by that point, and also into the math that would let me analyze these very large data sets. And there was a professor there, and he's subsequently no longer with us, but Professor Bruce Kowalski, who was in the analytic chemistry department, and he had actually found a branch, legitimately a branch of chemistry that's now called chemometrics, which is the application of what we would now call AI or big data or data mining or pattern recognition to these kind of data. Hadn't been done before. And that was really quite something. So I said, well, how can we do that to MRI data? And one thing led to another. I eventually obtained a number of patents based on the work through the University of Washington. And that then led me to co-found a company called Confirma, based in Kirkland, Washington. We were in business for about 11 years, from 1998 until the year 2011, when the company was sold to Merge Technologies. Merge Technologies was then subsequently bought by IBM Watson, and the product of our company, called CADStream, was taken over and improved by IBM, and it's available now. You'll see a slide of it later on. I had you know how it is when you give a talk, it's always kind of, like it's very modest and like, oh, it wasn't anything. I didn't do anything. It was all these brilliant people. No, in my case, I was so fortunate to work with. I mean, this whole thing was largely the work of the extremely smart and very committed developers I had the pleasure of working with. They taught me a lot, and I admired them tremendously. They really made it happen. They took my ideas and made them something that is commercially available to help primarily women with breast cancer. I'll tell you a little bit about it, but this is not a talk about all that. But if you have questions, I'm happy to answer. But I want to emphasize that it was a wonderful environment. At its peak, we had 110 employees. We actually had an office in Berlin, Germany for a while. We sold systems. And at that time, by the way, I realize now probably your Apple Watch, or actually Microsoft makes a watch, your Microsoft Watch, but has more computing power than the specialty computers that we had at the time to do these. I mean, because at the time we were dealing with like maybe 1,000 to 1,200 512 square images, with each voxel having a bit depth of approximately like 8 bits. And at the time, that was a lot of data. And I grant you now, kidding aside, that's embarrassingly trivial to talk about. Okay? But at the time, it was quite something. So these developers came up with ways of doing this. And because we develop things in the world that's governed by the FDA, you have to do things in a way that is absolutely reproducible, using equipment that adheres to certain standards, like an ISO standard, for example. You can't just say, well, I hear that Dell is coming out with a faster computer. Maybe we'll use that instead because that'll be better for processing these images. No, it doesn't work that way. If you make it on, let's say, if you develop a product at that time for the medical market, and your hardware is I'll just say for fun, but say whatever the current generation Surface is, okay, running whatever the current generation of Windows is, okay, that's locked in. You don't get to say, just the way you might upgrade an application for the consumer market. You can't just say, oh, Well, this is now Windows 14 or something. We'll just change that. No, the FDA does not work that way. So we had to really, you have to develop it very specifically for it. And then that goes to the FDA for approval. There are two types of approval. One is clearance, which is the easier pathway. And I won't waste your time with telling you that, I mean, if you want to know all that, but, and the other one is a much more difficult pathway, typical for drugs, and that's the pre-market approval or the PMA process. Anyway, so with all of that, I was doing these things simultaneously, such that I was working as a radiologist and partially running this company. And so eventually, fortunately, it was all of these people who made it happen. And there's no weird modesty in that. They did a tremendous amount, and I'm very grateful to all of them. I believe that some of them might still be in the area working, but anyway, so with that, my goal is by the end here, I want to give you an idea of some of the challenges. And I don't know if in your work now or in the future, any of this will spark something for you. But I'm hoping that it might, somebody who sees this or hears about it might say, oh, that would be easy to do. We could do this. Okay. These problems I'm going to show you will affect all of us. And I will talk a little bit about that, but these are not theoretical problems. And just because I'm talking about it now doesn't mean I'm, that I'm the only one who's ever thought of this or somehow these are something that I have, I'm unique in that regard, but I want to bring them to the attention of people who can make a difference. So, at least I hope. Let's see if I get this right. All right. So now, one of the questions that comes up is about early on when I was just out of training, I was interested in the problem of in the integrity of data. How do you know if data are unchanged? Now I realize now it's not a big deal. That's like all sorts of ways you can do that. But 30 years ago, it wasn't as well known. And I was also interested in the technology that steganography, that is hiding data, if you will, inside of other kinds of data, using one form of data or structure as a container for something else. This has been used, for example, during the Cold War. It was fairly common to include information inside of something else that was innocuous looking. As far as I know, it might still be used. But anyway, so my question was, okay, how would you know if the least significant bit, one least significant bit in a large image or image set has been changed? Why I was interested in that, I can't tell you, but I was. And so anyway, that led to looking at an image like this. So the question is, as you look at this, is this a legitimate image? By legitimate, I mean, was I really in a picture with Barack Obama and my daughter at the time, and the bunny rabbit down there, Finley, which was my daughter's, I think he was a 25-pound bunny, huge thing. So, well, obviously, if you look at the margins of the bunny, you can tell it's just pasted in there. But it's not so obvious that Eleanor is Eleanor pasted in there? And if you look at it, you can do all sorts of things just by looking at it, sort of say, well, maybe this is the shadows right, and so on, all kinds of. And then is Obama legitimate, or did I put him in there? And there are ways, AI generated images, they're going to get very much better, of course. But typically, if you look at symmetry, nobody is symmetrical. Yeah, I know we're supposed to be symmetrical, but on the level of when I look at someone, nobody is symmetrical, and nobody's symmetrical inside either. Okay, so these are sorts of things. But I wondered, how can you actually do this mathematically? And so that led me to this paper. I published in. I was very fortunate to have it published. This is from 1995. It is probably, and I say this without having done much looking around, but certainly at the time there was very little literature at all outside of the technical literature like engineering and science. There was nothing in the imaging literature on this. So this is a technique, of course, for authenticating digital images of any kind, but I happen to do it for the medical field. And I had a companion, this, by the way, is in our premier journal called Radiology. That is our #1 peer-reviewed journal. And I wanted to see how high I could shoot. Could I really do this as a single author? And so that was something that I took a lot of joy in being able to do. I had a companion article to that on steganography, which I think either it was not well written on my part, or the science that I had was not, that I didn't do a very good job at, or it was just kind of like too far out for a clinical radiology journal. Even though it's our best one, meaning most citations and that sort of thing. It was on steganography and how it could be used to hide things in medical images. And I was interested in the question of, well, okay, can you, never mind weird stuff like trying to modify an image to change what a patient's something or other might look like, but can you embed the patient's name, social security number, driver's license, whatever, or a photo? I mean, so that you can do something to prove that that's the person's data. Not so much because there's going to be, somebody's going to try and do something fraudulent, but you'd be amazed even now. Perhaps you've been to a medical clinic or a doctor. My experience is typically you go there and say, may I have your insurance card and your ID, please? And they look at you and they scan the cards. And then you go to the next point. May I see your ID and your insurance card over and over again? They really want to make sure that everything is done. It's both to protect you and to ensure the integrity of the data, because ensuring the integrity of the data is critical. Once you get a little error in your records, it's a beast to try and find out, okay, I mean, you can delete it, but you don't know who else is relying on that. Okay, and I have seen many times where, well, in my practice time, where a little bit of data goes wrong in somebody's record, and it really is, it takes on life of its own and can end up denying them medical insurance, health, life insurance and so on. Simple things like that. All right. This is an image that I took. I will tell you, it's 50 times enlarged. Okay, I took it with a macro lens. If you look at this, I would have no clue as to what it is. Obviously I took it, I know where it is. But to me, looking at this, it's a stunning image. The colors, I would have had no idea what this is. This comes, of course, from nature. And it has just this kind of radiant glow about it. Now, you might look up in the corner, and as radiologists, we're taught to always look at the corners of the images because a lot can hide there. And so you see a sort of a fuzzy yellowish area, and that if you were trained in looking at these things, that might tell you something. But if we back out a little bit, okay, now we're looking at more of that fuzzy yellow area. And you can see on there perhaps maybe some hairs. It's kind of a dirty image, and it's not entirely in focus. It's hard for me to focus it because it's a three-dimensional object, and I'm focusing, when you're focusing that with that high magnification, this is what I'm looking at the microscope. At my level of ability, it was hard to bring it into focus. So I think a person with greater skill could actually do that, but you get the idea. And so if I now back out more, then you see that this is the business end of a wasp. Okay, this wasp, I found this wasp dead on the floor, I think in the garage or something. I would like to study that, but that's the kind of thing that we do in radiology. We see a little something and a suggestion of something else, and we try somehow to put that together with the clinical information. We might talk to the patient if we have time. We might call the referring doctor and ask. We might look at the medical record. We might ask a family member if we have permission to do that about something. And we try to put a story together to tell in a sense, that you are looking at a wasp, okay, from just that teeny little bit that we actually see on the MR, CT, ultrasound, PET study, PET CT, PET MR, or MR alone. This is a standard chest radiograph or chest X-ray, which I'm sure you've seen many times. In the course of training, typically, if I were assigned to read these different practices do things differently. Academic and private practice, they do things differently. Yet at the University of Washington, they have a specialty chest section, and so that's what they do all day. They look at chest CTs and these, okay? And in private practice, if I were assigned to read chest films all day, I would probably be expected to read about 200 or 250 of these in a day. Now, if they are simple chest radiographs, and by simple, I mean like, let's say school physical type things, I mean, very straightforward. Let's say a 25-year-old from Microsoft who, for some reason, is going to travel and wants to, for visa, they require a physical exam and all that for certain countries. So you might have to have a chest rate. This is what it looked like.
But Justin,
Hmm.
it says low battery.
Oh dear.
So,
You have a power cord?
Of course, they don't have a power cord. I have a battery. It's been plugged in for days. Then I will move along. I'm sorry, I didn't, it's like, I come to Microsoft with an Apple computer, you'd think I'd want to make video. Okay, I mean, I'd like to show you my confidence by, of course I have a power cord. I do have a backup though, so I could just do it on this if I have to. All right, so anyway, but I will hustle along.
no, that's fine. Take your time.
But anyway,
This will.
and I don't even need the slides, of what I can tell you, but suffice to say, I just want you to notice here. Oh, that was not what I wanted to do, but in the interest of your time, I don't know how to point on this, but I'm sorry, I can't, is there a pointer or can I use it? I'll just show you.
Use your mouse maybe. Mouse and.
Let's see. Trying, I don't know if it's going to, see, I can't see, what I'm going to show you though is somebody who understands what a chest is, looks at this and says, okay, this is a young person. I know it's a young person because here, this dark area in between these two white things, these are bones, calcified bones, and there's cartilage in between here. All of us, the cartilage is gone. Our bones are fused. That's called a physis. In children, that's open. So I know it's a child. How old? Fairly large person. I would say probably in the teens. Is it a male or female? Well, that's a little harder, but I don't see typical shadow or areas of white here to correspond to female breasts or large male breasts. And so anyway, I would say that this is a male. Somebody like about 13, 14, right in there. This is a normal chest radiograph, and I just wanted to see what it looks like. But imagine that this rib is missing. Imagine it's missing. If you're not specifically looking at each rib and counting them, it would be very easy to miss it. And so one of the hard things that we have problems with is we don't see what we don't see, and we don't know that we've missed it. Here's the landscape of our errors. Premature, I mean, you can read this as well as I can, but the idea is that I look at a film and I said, wow, okay, I don't see anything here. Typically, a radiologist said, oh, okay, this is normal, next case. But have I really looked at it? Have I taken the clinical history the doctor's given us, and it could be it's usually very limited, cough or temperature. That's one of my favorite, like temperature. Okay, thank you. So, what am I supposed to do with that? Presumably fever. So I don't see anything like a pneumonia. We're done. Next case. Well, but I didn't look at the heart, and the heart's not normal. It's slightly enlarged. I didn't say anything because I wasn't thinking of it. I didn't notice the break in the rib where there's a metastasis because I wasn't thinking about that. No one told me the patient has lung cancer. That's premature search satisfaction. Confirmation bias. Well, the patient has a cough and a temperature. He's 25 or she's 25 years old. Of course, it's just a community-acquired pneumonia. End of story. Yeah, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's going to be aliens. It's going to be a very unusual situation. I didn't ask if the patient had been recently to Rwanda, and I'm not going to think about prenunculosis. Okay, why would I suggest ranunculosis, okay, or babesiosis, or any other unusual disease in this country? They're here, but not in any significant amount. Because I wouldn't think of it. And I just made a mistake. I didn't ask, have you had any foreign travel? I don't have the time to ask. And that's when we're going to be able to, this is where AI can help out. I'll tell you more. Failure to recognize missing anatomy. We talked about that. Normal variants, of which there are huge,
But this plant,
oh,
I don't know what's the shape.
that
Then you-
that is it.
It's just a shape.
I'm so impressed. It is.
Plugged in, so let's just find out.
I don't know how you pull that off, but I am deeply impressed.
Jeez.
Cool.
Yeah, people.
Please, my thanks to whoever did that. I was so arrogant. I felt like, should I bring my power? No, I shouldn't. Anyway, so normal variants, we have books. I have a book at home. It's creatively called Normal Variants That May Stimulate Disease. It is about 950 pages, and it's filled with pictures of normal anatomy that looks just like things like fractures or diseases and so on. It would be so nice if instead of taking the time for me to have to thumb through, and after all, I need to begin to learn what they are, okay? But I mean, if you're gonna be 250 chest films in a day, you don't have a lot of time to like sit there and say, oh, maybe I will go to the library, look this up and come. No, because if you do that, you will not get home until 9 o'clock at night, and you will face a very cold dinner covered in foil, and a 3-month-old who is, whose mother is telling you, your daughter is not going to know. And, it's so you balance, and I'm sure that many of you face your own pressures here in any kind. I mean, this is probably a very demanding place to work. And as good as you all are to be here, and there's no flattery in it, but it's not, you have to be good to get to work here or at the big tree across the lake. There are many demands placed on you, and anything you can do to make things more efficient, you'll take. Who would? The gambler's fallacy. This is what happens when we see. You probably encounter this. Just you've seen people doing this. If you've ever been to Las Vegas, people who are watching to see when somebody who's been playing one of the slot machines for a long time decides to give up because they think that the next pull of that lever is going to be the payout. It doesn't work that way. Each pull is an independent. I mean, assuming it's a fair machine, each pull is independent, and so that's a problem. Well, radiologists think that way. Okay, how so? Well, did you hear about that fantastic case that she had last week? She saw a case of furunculosis. I can't believe it. Now, when I see something and it looks like furunculosis, do you think I'm going to say, oh yeah, here's another case of that? In Bellevue, Washington, the odds of it being furunculosis, very low, very, very, very low. So instead of saying, oh, it could be this, I'm going to say, nah, not a chance. And I'd be wrong. I would be wrong. Fatigue. I don't know if you've heard this, but if you ever have surgery, you really don't want to be the last case of the day on Friday. I mean, people are tired. The doctors are going to do the best they can for you. The nurses will also. But I'll tell you, I'd want to be, well, in my case, I have had surgery. And I'm glad I was like number one at 7 a.m. Okay, everybody's fresh, eager to go. But I get tired too. After I have read 200 out of 250 cases, I am fatigued. I have to admit, you can't do it and maintain the same level of Christmas. This is where AI can help us because it won't get tired. Its performance will not drop. Distraction. In my office, phones ring. Doctors have questions. Would you look at the study you saw last week? So everything stops. I have to pull that up. Oh, and now the technologist wants to ask me about how should I take this particular image and we're having a problem with this patient. Would you mind talking with her? I wish I had time to be, I mean, I would be a better doctor if I had time, but I can't talk to people. I don't have that time. I wish I could tell patients whose studies show nothing, no metastases. I wish I could tell those patients, particularly on a Friday, that their studies are normal. There's no disease, so they don't have to sweat the weekend wondering if they have brain metastases. Okay? I mean, believe me, if I hope you never are in that situation. I hope that none of your relatives or friends are. But it to me is so cruel to have a patient come in on a Friday for a study, say MR of the brain, when there's a concern for metastases from a variety of cancers, and you make them wait until next week, knowing that it's normal. I think that is a pretty cruel thing to do. Have I done it? Yes. Have I also sort of like stayed late so that I could talk to a patient? Yes, I have. But again, we're human, and at some point you say, okay, do I go home again tonight at 9 or 9:30? Or do I tell this person? And sometimes you're weak and you say, I just can't do it. I can't do this. Meaning I can't take the time. Multitasking, it is fashionable for, I'm sure, for many people who work here and for doctors to say, I can do it all. I can handle it. Throw it at me. Hurt me. I can multitask. No, you can't. No, you can't. You can think you're multitasking, but what you're doing is you're doing a bad job of doing many things simultaneously. It is better to just focus on one thing at a time, but that's very hard in a typical busy medical environment. But AI can do that. I mentioned AI can do it. In 2024, if you are almost any kind of doctor, medical doctor, but because I'm radiology, I would say you can choose two of these things. You can't choose any, you can't have all three at the same time, though. You can be productive and you can be accurate, but you're not going to be compassionate. Meaning, I don't have the, if I'm going to be accurate and productive, because there's a mandate from my management to be that I have to read so many cases before I go home. That's what in the group I was in, second group I was in. Post it on your workstation was a little bar graph. And the bar graph showed you where you were in relationship to the amount of work that you had to do that day before you went home. And so if by noon you weren't at the halfway point, you knew you were going to be staying late. And so maybe that's not a big deal, but it really does have an effect on it. And there was a second, then management said, aha, we have another idea to help motivate them. We'll put a second paragraph in. This is to compare you to your peers in the practice, the partners, where you are in relationship to all of those around you. So if you're not where everybody else is, you're kind of like not with the program here. Nobody's going to say that, but it's kind of out there. You might get a phone call from a mid-level manager saying, Dr. Smith, is everything going okay? And which means like, you're falling behind, buddy. What's the problem? And I mean, that really did happen. So usually compassionate care goes because nobody's going to criticize you because you didn't talk to a patient. I mean, maybe the text of rumble that you're not very kind, or that they prefer this doctor to working with me, let's say. But it's a practical matter versus, I mean, if I'm going to mess up any one of those, it's not going to be accuracy. And I sure don't want to fall behind in productivity. But I think that AI can help us with that. We can do all three then. All right, now this is, you can tell I was running out of time. I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna get my lab people to the doctor and all that kind of stuff. So I did this by hand, forgive me. There are basically, in my way of thinking, two ways to answer a given question. We can either, I'm going to say these things, you can look at that health bit, but basically you can either make single measurement with a very expensive instrument, such as a very high resolution in the world of chemistry, a high resolution NMR spectrometer costing a couple $1 million that takes a lot of training to do. It takes a special technician to maintain. Okay, you can make that brilliant measurement, and that may answer the question about the structure of, let's say, a molecule. Or you can make measurements, some low resolution measurements with an infrared spectrometer, a low resolution mass spectrometer, and maybe a student grade NMR spectrometer. And then with some math, combine them to get the same information. And that's what Professor Kowalski did at Washington. This is also done in the world of intelligence gathering. You can try and recruit a super spy, for example. One of the great spies that the United States had against what was then the Soviet Union was, of course, Colonel Oleg Penkovsky. He was a military intelligence colonel that felt that their system was wrong. And for ideological reasons, he sought out the American ambassador in Moscow and tried to tell them, I'd like to work with you. Anyway, eventually it worked out. And he was a tremendous asset for the United States. And he was eventually caught and executed in Moscow. It works the other way. Oliver James was the chief of counterintelligence for the Soviet section at the CIA. He, for years and years and years, he sold highly classified information. Agents that we were running in the Soviet Union, he sold that information to Moscow, and they were all executed. About 9 people died because of that. But you might be saying, so what does this have to do with anything? Well, it's not easy to find those super spies. Those are really hard, and then to maintain them with secrecy, to make sure they're not double agent, to make sure they aren't turned on you. Okay, as in, we know that you're spying for the U.S., so we have a little proposition for you. We're going to kill your family unless you are a double agent for us now. I'm merely saying that there are ways that pressure can be put on these people. But trying to find somebody of that caliber who's deep inside, who really gets a great intelligence, that's hard. But what's not hard, as hard, is gathering low-level human intelligence, like seeing who comes and goes from a certain office, for example. Collecting signals from various means, NSA has to do that. Collecting geospatial information from the myriad satellites that all major countries have. Collecting computer intelligence through various things like Stuxnet and various malware that is designed by the agencies and inserted. And open source intelligence. Individually, each of those might be kind of nifty or interesting or helpful, but when you put them together, that's how the discoveries are made. And all major countries do this. All right. Now, this is my sort of like my major conclusion slide. This is what the takeaway is. This is what I hope you will take away with the idea of where AI can help us, help me do a better job to help you eventually. I mean, I will come back to this, but in essence, on the left-hand side of the screen is sort of how it's done now. You go to the doc or urgent care or some form of medical care, and you see the provider, and he or she orders, let's say, to make it simple, a CT scan. That comes to me, I look at it, I have the history that I'm provided is, let's just make, non-smoker with persistent cough despite antibiotic therapy. That would be a typical therapy question. So I know from my background training, blah, 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 I'm supposed to be looking for certain things. I know that doctor or nurse practitioner or whatever wants to know some specific answers. I know how to answer that for that person.
Heather Smith.
Excuse me for just a second. I love, Rudy, I'm actually in the middle of my talk. May I call you later, dear? He's just admitted, yes, sir. But, that's about, her question was not, it was more like, do you have the dog? Anyway, so the radiologist will answer it, but I have access to only a limited amount of information compared to the universe of information that's available about that patient. And I don't have the time, or if you'd like to be a little bit uncharitable, you can say you choose not to take the time to get more information. Okay. Contrast that though with where I'd like to see us go. Patient comes in with the same complaints, and for the sake of argument, let's same situation. But imagine that you have, and I grant you that about what I'm about to describe is in some sense offensively invasive. That is, delving into certain personal things may not be something that society or any of us would necessarily want, but there's the potential. If an AI system would look at things like your entire medical record, everything within, let's say, a given system, if you stay with the system, like University of Washington, Virginia Mason, Group Health, Providence, all of that tends to stay together. So imagine the system has access to all of that information, all of your imaging studies, labs, and so on. And it also has access to all of the information that that entire healthcare system has for all patients who may have presented with similar sorts of things. Okay. And it also can reach out to the medical literature. So in a sense, you have now expanded not only the universe of what data are available to you, but you have now the tools to actually help answer questions based on this universe, immense universe of clinical information. Now, it remains to be proven if that will actually help people or be useful in practice. But I think that it's worthy of study. I think that it's an important direction for practical AI going. And that's what, I mean, that's, although I can't do that, obviously I don't have the resources or these sorts of things, but that's the sort of thing that I toss out as an idea that maybe somebody will be able to, in someday in a position of some authority to deal with and work with. And that's what I'd like to see. If anyone, I'd be happy to help. If anybody has, for whatever company you might be with, is interested in pursuing their part of that, I will leave a bunch of business cards around if you would like to contact me. I mean, I'm happy to help. In fact, I have two neighbor on each side of my house. One neighbor held some position at Microsoft. I don't know what she does, or he does. And on the other side, I have a senior developer, the daughter of the few. She is a senior developer at Google. And so I said to the daughter, I was out doing something in the garden, and she came by and I said, I'd be really interested in seeing if Google would like to do anything with I know they have a group that does medical imaging stuff. I'd like to, with your background, that would be great. They'd love to have you. I said to my other neighbor, Microsoft, I said the same thing. I said, with your background, they'd love to have you. They would you be fantastic. I will recommend you. Same thing with my other neighbor. So I received, so I filled out the application. I send in with the other 30 million they get every day or something like that. I send it in thinking okay, I get it. I'm already planning where I'm going to put the paintings on the wall in my office on the 39th floor overlooking in Seattle. And deciding, do I want one executive assistant or two? Okay. I received a very polite note from Google. They said, we're sorry, but your qualifications don't qualify you for a position in dermatology in San Diego. And I said, but that's not what I want. And I said to my neighbor, what should I do? She said, well, maybe move to San Diego. I said, but I'm not a dermatologist. No, that's not quite what I was thinking. My other neighbor said, oh, but I said, but you said I was they would love me. I was going, well, things changed. Okay. So I just want you to know that I tried. But anyway, if I can be of any help, I'll leave my clothes. Do give me a contact. Anyway, now, if at any time I could show you a little bit about what we did at Confirma, the sort of breast cancer and all that. I think there are only a few slides. If we are for time. Oh, here, well, so it's 1/17/25. Okay, well, is that the lifetime or is that the time, the GMT or something?
I mean, maybe we can see what the audience is
Sure.
thinking at this point and then proceed from that.
I can't, I'm sorry, it's,
7:38.
oh, I'm sorry, so I'm sorry, I run over a bit, I do apologize, I mean it sincerely, because I know you all are here and you would probably rather be at home, doing whatever you do. But if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer, or I'll just leave the cards here and people can take them and whatever. All right, well, thank you. I mean, in any case, I'll leave it. Thank you very much for your time and thank you so much, both of you, for inviting me. It's a pleasure. I do hope it was of some benefit. And thank you too. I really appreciate the help with the computer. I'm sorry I wasn't able to do it myself. And thank you for the.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Justin.
All right,
Thank you.
But again, like, anybody does have any questions or thoughts about it?
yeah, yeah,
We'll
whatever.
stick around and,
Oh, sure.
we have some time. So.
May I give you some, I mean, I don't know if it's like, I didn't know how many would be here and, or if you want me to do it like, I just have a few that I can leave for you if you'd like.
Yeah, you can just.
Thank you.
Thank you. We can put this one here.
Oh, thank you very much. Here you go. My pleasure. I know I can handle it with both hands, but I'm sorry. I'm a part of public schools, okay? You know, we don't learn it. My pleasure.
Thank you.
And that's what I'm saying. I recognize these smiling faces with that. That's me when once when I was happy. Right, I've gotten over it. Children do that too, you know. Like, no, thank you so very much.
Thank you for your.
Okay,
Good question.
please.
The last 5 minutes, you're talking about large scale, like if you can access all those data, across, you're talking about across organization, across the big, large scale, right? As the Evergreen Hospital, as the Overlake Hospital, when you can across
That's correct.
all those together data from all different patients, right? So I was just thinking about example. I remember I had, woman, we always have breast cancer, breast mammogram,
No,
right?
question.
Now, I used to go to Overlake,
Mhm.
but sometimes I feel they are, I want to try others. So I actually had Evergreen this year. And I find out the Evergreen actually can access Overlake from even 5-6 years ago,
Yeah.
they can find out. So are those big organizations, they all have an interchange database now without our permission?
You just nailed it. I was about to say, when you said, do they access it without permission?
Where is that database
I only know of,
located?
when, to answer your question directly, no, they should, in general, that we should ask patients for permission to access data.
Yeah.
But as a radiologist, it would be, this is a yes, no. And I will answer straight. The way it's done is, for example, I don't read mammograms, but if I did, and I did not, and I knew that you had mammograms at, let's say, Virginia Mason, but you're a patient at Overlake. I'm making it all up. I don't.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I could have our technologist or staff member contact Regina Mason and ask them to send me your
Yeah, I
studies
know what you mean, like, kind of like.
without your specific permission, the way, because there's the implication that if I'm looking at your mammogram, then naturally I would need to compare it to see that there any change. So usually that whether it is ultimately correct or not, but that's the way it is done. What I can't do is, if you had, let's say, you're a new patient, and I make all this up, but, you're a new patient, and I'm seeing you for, I don't know, cough, and you're coming here from Virginia. I can't just call the hospital and say, hey, would you send me her medical records? Because I'd like to see what she's had done and all that kind of stuff. I have to have, you have to give them your permission.
That's
At
what
least
it's
to me.
new patient, is that what you're saying? When it's new
Yeah,
patient?
the patient has to give permission for the release of medical records.
Mhm.
But in radiology, Usually you don't have to have specific, explicit permission because it's somewhat implied, I mean, what we are, we're expected to compare. Yes, we
That's-
are expected to, as part of the job, we're expected to compare if there are any prior studies
Change.
available. So generally, I mean, if we would not have to get you, now, again, if you're coming from Virginia, they might say, we're happy to send it if you get the patient to sign a release form. They can do that. I think the closer it is to this, the more local it is, the easier it is. That's, I would, what I say. It
Yeah,
did,
yeah.
and they're generally, the very large systems share a common database for their clinical information. It's called Epic.
How
Epic
do you
is
spell it?
E as in Edgar,
Mhm.
P as in Paul, I as in Indiana, C as in Charlie, Epic. And I hope I spelled it right. But Epic, and that's, for example, it's used by Overlake, by the University of Washington, by Evergreen, by Providence. It is a very large relational database.
For all the imaging, let's say mammogram.
I don't, it contains all of the reports of imaging. I don't know, I believe it does contain or can access digital imaging, okay? I don't know, of course it does. Yes, I take it back. I've helped my wife works at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center. I know that when, if she's working from home, and she will say, would you mind looking at this, the CT or whatever on a patient? It's all done within Epic. So yes, so it's all contained, but all of the patient's data are there now. In my case, so I can talk about me and I'm not worried about patient mission. I have been seen at a number of different places. I've had surgery at Evergreen and at the University of Washington. And let's see, and Overlake, actually. So I've given permission for the doctors at Evergreen to see stuff that was done at Overlake and at the University of Washington and vice versa. Because obviously it's in my interest that they know and have access. If I didn't get permission, they would not have access to it. You can, if you have an online account with MyChart, as it's called, then you can, and you've been to other healthcare centers, anywhere, actually in the United States, you can give permission for the University of Arizona Medical Center to have access to your records and vice versa. And that also means that you, as a patient, within MyChart, which is part of Epic, can see your records from University of Arizona Medical Center and from Evergreen or wherever else. So we're that far, but actually using all of that data in the sense of trying to extract information, that's a bigger, that's another step.
Huge.
Yes, that's right. But I believe, and again, this is a belief, this is not, these aren't data, that we will get there and we will be able to improve our ability to help people. Because after all, I mean, as I have in other talks, in medical sort of talks, I have often, or when I teach medical students, basically everybody in the room will be dead in 100 years, and everybody you love will be dead in 100 years. Now the question is not will you be dead? The question is how will you be dead? If you're lucky, you will be that 15% of people who die like that. You're at Costco trying to decide, do I want the regular Tide or the Tide with OxyClean? And the next thing you know, you're sitting on a cloud in heaven with an angel saying, did you want the cream chicken on mashed potatoes or did you want to have roast beef right now? You know, I mean, like that's you're gone. And everybody, and because your heart's through a funny rhythm, or you had a tiny little bit of plaque that broke off from a vessel and went up into why evolution did this, I don't know, but we have a tiny little artery at the back of our brains called the basilar artery. Teeny little thing. If that gets blocked, there are two possible outcomes. Neither of them is good. If you're lucky, you die instantly. If you're not lucky, you end up with what's called the locked-in syndrome, meaning you become paralyzed, quadriplegic. You can't breathe, so you'll be on a ventilator for the rest of your life, okay? But your brain is fine. So I'm just pointing out, I mean, that's bad, but let's just say that 85% though of people are going to end up seeing someone like me at some point in their lives. And I want to make sure my goal is not necessarily to help people live really a long time. It's to try and give people with whatever life they have, the best quality of life for the longest time, whether it's helping us figure out how to decrease the chance of a person developing Alzheimer's, or decreasing the likelihood of heart disease, or premature infections, killings. So that's my hope, that with these techniques, we can give people better quality of life for longer, more time in the story. I mean, I can play the violin.
Yeah.
You get the idea.
Just, I had a question. So, does AI make mistakes?
Oh, AI will make mistakes. AI, do you mean in my experience? Have you worked-
So, no, I mean, yeah, so human versus AI, right? I
Yes,
get it, I get
oh,
it. AI is
in my
more,
area, I'll tell you, yeah,
Right.
we've actually done that study. That study was published in with, I mean, I know my area specifically, there may be much more now that's been published on that, but I want to be very careful and not make claims I can't back up. I'll show you here, pardon me. One of the reasons that Confirma, which is the name of the company, developed CAD-Stream was because it took radiologists so long to read breast MR exams. I mean, I used to read a lot of them, and it would take me it was totally impractical. So, I mean, an hour. It would take, if you're looking at, remember, you've got like 1,200 images to look at, and they're also over time. So you have to look at how each voxel in the image changes in intensity over time. Cancer, breast cancer, tends to take up contrast. It lights up very quickly and then fairly rapidly washes out. It just goes back to normal intensity. Whereas benign tumors like fibrous tissue takes up contrast slowly and releases it slowly. Well, if you map each voxel's uptake curve and you color encode it, then you have a map of basically how rapidly the tissue takes up contrast and releases it. And so that's what we did, we automated that. So it went from impossibly long times, impractical, to something that you could read in 10 minutes and do more accurately. And I'll show you what that looks like here. This is the IBM's promotional blurb for what is now merged CAD-Stream. But I'll show you, I hope I included the pictures. Okay, yes, here. So I realize this is a pretty alien looking image to you, but what you're seeing is this is a kind of an image of the breast. It's done in this plane, sagittal plane, as if you're looking at the patient side by side. So front of the breast here, chest wall here, bottom, feet, head. This is misregistration, but this is the area that's enhancing, as we say. So the question is, I'm skipping all the clinical stuff that goes into this, but the question is, how is this cancer? And if so, how much of it is cancer? Okay. Well, if you do this, if you plot out those uptake curves, the area in red are those curves with rapid uptake and washout. The blue is kind of like, well, I'll do it in time, gradual uptake and out. And sort of green is something in between. But if you're going to biopsy something, this is where you want to go, not this, not that area, even though to the eye, to the radiologist, it says, well, that's pretty bright too, and it's not normal. But that's not cancer. And so one of the studies on this, where they did exactly that, they said, okay, compare human to AI and to truth, pathologically proven. We had these breasts were taken off and sectioned. And this was done by Connie Lehman at the University of Washington Department of Radiology, and that was published in the American Journal of Radiology, which is our second most prestigious journal. And it did show that it improved the accuracy over the human.
Mhm.
And, but if you said, does it make mistakes? In the sense that it was not perfect. Okay, I mean, it might be, this is not this particular case, but let's just say this is the way it worked. But maybe, there are some tumors that don't play by those rules. They don't like, they didn't read the book about, well, you should take it up rapidly and squirt it out. Okay, there are all sorts of cell types, but the most common ones, the adenocarcinoma, those do this. Yeah, please.
Are you saying that those color that's showing up is from AI
Yes,
software
that's
imaging
correct.
that they're presenting that way?
That's correct.
Determination of color coded.
Yes,
Right, so
that's
you're
correct,
saying-
yes.
You're saying that now you need to biopsy just the red part.
Just the red part. Well, now you know where to put the needle. We're very good at, that sounds arrogant, but I mean, we have ways of putting a needle, a biopsy needle, within a millimeter of where we want it to be. And that's,
Is that AI guided? when you
well,
say
it's
you
in the
have to
sense of it is AI guided because we use these images with the patient is in the MR scanner. I will, let me just, the patient is typically lying flat.
Mhm.
The breasts are hanging or filling cups in which the antenna for the MR examination is built around it. Okay, right, exactly. That gives us our best signal to noise. And then we have a device that can go in at an angle and with these coordinates, I mean, and it's inserted by, I mean, yeah, you could have a robot do it, but that's something that we don't need that for that. For the brain, yes, you do want that for the brain. For the breast, you don't need it, and it's just not necessarily expensive. But anyway, so from CADs from the program, exactly, it will tell you what angle in 3 dimensions is alpha and theta angles. You know how to put this in. You have a device that you dial in those numbers and it will position the needle for you. And then you slowly advance that needle. Obviously, you put in anesthetic. And then you slowly put a needle, you then image to see where the tip of the needle is. You take the patient, you put the patient back in, advance a little bit more, and you can sort of feel when you hit, I mean, this tissue is primarily fibrofatty, it's mostly fat. It has a very different feel to the needle than this stuff does. So the moment you touch, I mean, if you're cutting a piece of meat, you know that how different, sort of like if you cut through fat, let's say, it feels different. Same thing here. Once you hit this, that's when you slow down and you then watch very carefully where the tip is. You advance a little more, and when you see the tip, and we can do this on MR, right here, then you trigger the biopsy device and it samples the area. And that then will be taken out and goes out to pathology. But we can show that after we've done the biopsy, we can show where the track is of the tissue that was extracted. So we know exactly where it was, but it's only because we have the AI tools. Now, it's possible that, I mean, you could do that with a robotic biopsy device, but for right now, that's somewhat overkill for the breast.
Mhm.
For the brain, it's not. If you're trying to delete a small group of cells that are causing epilepsy, let's say, that's not where you want to do freehand stuff. As good as the neurosurgeons are, let's say, but no, that generally now the standard would be that you have a lot of computer systems to do that. So that's how, I hope I answered your question. There are many things you can do, but they're not necessarily worth the effort in a sense. So anyway, that's just one example of that. It was,
So, just the other thing is there anything like intuition in this? I mean,
into it.
yeah, so I mean, are there any radiologists who are good because they have some intuition?
Oh, yeah. Now there are.
And AI won't be able to develop that, right?
Nope,
I mean,
nope.
AI is like, it will work on equations
Yes,
and something. So
if
is there like a sixth sense or something?
there are. I have, just as there are, okay, oh, thank you for coming.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
We can have
My-
a question.
No, no,
It's like you have to read 200 some fields every day.
250.
Do you have to take shifts?
Yeah, well, typically, on a working
Because
day,
you say I get tired, it's too sleepy.
oh, no, I understand.
Especially in hospital.
No,
right?
I don't. I will give you an answer. Just to be quick. Our group, when you are elected to partnership, if you do a good job and all kinds of stuff, you get, I'm sure in the corporate world, there are some of the equivalent, but you get elected by the partners to be a part owner of the practice.
Right.
Okay, so that's all good.
It's for production, right? I,
And so when you are doing things like that, when you're part, you are expected to perform at a certain level. Okay? And while you and I, if we're just discussing, would say, of course you should take breaks. I mean, if anybody said, sit at your desk and code for 8 hours straight, you don't get any breaks. You don't get to stand up, you don't get any water, you don't get any food. Just sit there and code. Versus the person who say, I want you to take a break every 20 minutes, just stand up, look out the window and come back and speak. Obviously, I mean, never mind what the psychology studies show, that person is going to do their job. And there are people who for whatever reason, just as in music, there are some, I mean, how many times I've taken piano lessons with the same teacher for 5 years, 2 hours of practice every day, and I still am not good. And I say it because I can look on YouTube and I can find a 4-year-old who will play something that I'm better than I ever will be able to. And I'm not exaggerating or being sarcastic. No,
Yeah.
I mean, this kid has a gift, and no matter how hard I work, I will never get to that level. There are radiologists I know who do, and doctors in general, who have that. Well, like, and they are very, very quick at something. Why? I wish I knew. My goal though is to help the rest of us who are not, if you were gifted in that way.
not that quick,
Yeah, come
Not
up to a
that
certain
quick.
level. Yeah.
but with the AI help,
I want to raise the boats so that, in a sense, so that the average radiologist becomes really good. I can't do much for the person who's gifted. He or she is already so good that, but at least if I can help the people who are average, because you can't be the best at every modality. I mean, you may be a very good person with ultrasound, but you can't also be a very good person with MR. I mean, there isn't time in life to do that. Okay, so, but maybe we can help the people who are good in MR, but not great, bring them up to the level of being very good. That's what I'd like to see us do.
I work in the optometry field.
Are you?
Yeah, I'm, vision center now. It's similar to what you're talking about, the burning, the production, because they're expecting us, okay, let's say they book 5 patients per hour. So that means you only have what?
12 minutes.
12 minutes per person, including all those testing. Optometry, we have to do those phoropter, checking the
Oh, yeah.
glasses
Right.
prescription or contacts.
That's why you have to
Yeah.
cover it up. All right.
There are certain things you cannot cut your minutes down. But the corporate still keep saying that, they wish you, between around 10 minutes, no more than 15 minutes, things like that. But then when you do fast, it discounts your quality of patient care.
Yeah.
Not like maybe you don't see the patient, right? Because most of the time
But for ultrasound,
see
Yeah.
in person.
in person,
And then they're going to feel I'm rushing them if
Yeah.
because every patient, they love a human doctor to talk to them, spend time with them. That's the
I agree with you.
limitation
I
of
agree.
human being. But the thing is about AI can never
No.
replace human when it comes to reception.
The human touch.
The real human, they want a real people.
When-
They don't want a
No,
robot.
I don't want a robot.
Robot.
I don't- No, I don't want, no, I have not, but iPhone, I know that in iPhones I have an iPhone 11, like iPhone 16 or 17 or whatever it becomes. When Apple Intelligence is fully implemented and all that kind of stuff, that's great, but I don't need a relationship with Siri. I don't need Siri with attitude, okay? I don't need to say, hey Siri, I'm going to Scotland. Where can I rent a car on Fair Isle? That's all we ever talk about is you. All you ever talk about is you. I want this, I want that. What about my needs? You know, what about me for a change?
It
okay?
answered that question for you.
Oh, really?
You asked a question and then it.
It really doesn't.
That's
You said, hey Siri, and then that thing
It
came.
I love it. Please tell them I love this sense of humor. But that's-
Sorry, I have something to,
Well,
thank you so much.
Oh, it's my
I mean,
pleasure.
I
Best
have
of
a
luck,
lot
you
of
all.
things to
yeah, you
consult
gave like a
with you,
good
but I know.
motivation for like how it could help,
It's
like
gonna be
what
a
are the
lot.
challenges?
Yeah, I think that AI idea can apply to every field, you know, dentist, right, optometry, ophthalmology. Not just
All it
medical.
takes is
It's so,
is asking the question
it's going to.
and having the framework to do it. But thank you so much. Best of luck to you now.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
for coming.
All right, and thank you so much. What a pleasure.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to take my anemic laptop and go take my labradoodle home. He's probably upset with me now.